We'll do it live. Okay.
Miss Perry, you know what we're going to talk today?
What are we going to talk today, brother?
Rock.
Rock. And not a little rock, a lot of rock.
Yeah. Got my friend here, Wayne Shovlin. He is the drum tech for Johnny Rabb of Collective Soul. They're getting ready to go on tour. So we're going to give you guys a little bit of a behind the curtain info on what goes into a show, what takes place on the road. So Wayne, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks. Cool. So you guys, you're heading out. I see the first show is July 8th in Washington.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Very cool. How long are you on tour for?
The tour runs till August 31st.
Yeah.
So,
I think I saw that it starts in Auburn, Washington, and it's ending August 29th, Grantville, Pennsylvania.
that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a long ride.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Long ride.
There's a bunch of shows before and after that too. That's the tour with Live and Our Lady Peace. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So I there's so much that we could talk with you. Some of the artists that you've worked with in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got a pretty impressive resume.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you have some good road stories.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got some.
I will
Some
say,
of those other road stories, right?
yeah, of course, there's going to be those things that he goes, I can't talk about that. Johnny Rabb back in, let's see, it was 2012, I think it was.
Okay.
Johnny Rabb did with Seminole Music and Sound and Roland Drums. They did a drum clinic at Seminole High School, and co-sponsored with Mayhem Magazine. And we went over there. Johnny did a whole thing for the music department there at Seminole High.
Very cool.
And it was awesome. It was a Roland drum kit, I guess, that they were promoting. And he was such a nice guy, man. Like the only thing that I thought was a little weird was none of the kids at the high school really knew who Johnny Rabb was. And because they were too young, they didn't understand Collective Soul.
Sure.
So they had no idea that this guy who's on tour playing to thousands of people at night was hanging out
there
in their drum department playing, this Roland kit. But and I'll never forget this one kid's face. He said, he goes, well, I know what Roland is. They make drums and the electronic drum kits. And I said, yeah. I said, but they're famous for the 808. Do you have any idea what that is? And he just looked at me and he's like, no. Like I said, you're in the drum department. You're in the band. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you don't know what an 808 is. And the technology hasn't caught up with the younger generation yet. Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
Or what was then the younger generation. Absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the things, Wayne, we got tons of questions, but I think what I want to know a little more about is how do you prepare for a tour? Mm-hmm. And then let's talk about kind of like what your functions are when you're on tour. You're more than just a drum tech. You're also assistant stage manager, right?
I'm the stage manager and assistant tour manager.
For
Collective Soul, yeah.
Okay. So when they say, okay, we're going on tour in July, mm-hmm. How much prep do you start? They start rehearsing when?
The band will get together at one of their houses or something like that and go over the set list or go over some new stuff. They'll fly us out for pre-production. So before that, we'll start going through the gear and making sure, like, if we need backups of anything, we'll reach out to those companies, get our backups. Of course, for Johnny's drums, we'll start out with all fresh heads, and he's with Remo, so Remo send us boxes of heads for the tour. Vinyl Cymbals will send us tons of backups, so we're ready for the tour. We keep all that in the truck. Yeah.
So you're traveling with your equipment.
So they send you just a bunch of cymbals.
Shoot them an email of what we need, and Johnny's been with Vinyl Cymbals for 20 years. He's been with Remo. So many other companies of, the little SimPad cymbal felts to his ProLogic practice pads. He's been with those companies for years and years. So they send us everything we need. And so we travel, all of our gear is in a semi.
So nobody's setting up your backline for you at the venue.
Right. No, we do that. So
how much pre-planning? When do you start putting stuff together for them? Just night of show?
No, we usually start pre-production probably about a week before the first show. So unfortunately this year we're a little rushed because we have a private show a couple days before pre-production. So we have to cram it all in just like a day or two, but we'll get it all done. It's not like we've been home for a long time. We were just out doing shows not too long ago. So everybody's familiar with the gear and what we have and what we need. So
I would assume with a band like Collective Soul, you're out there, they've been out there 20 plus years. So
last year was their 30th anniversary.
Okay. Wow. So 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, y'all are, systems are in place. Y'all are ready to go. So even when you're not on tour, that's just like an extended break.
Yeah.
And then when they say, okay, go, everybody just meets where they're supposed to go.
That's it. Yeah. Everybody, the band and crew's ready to go on a day's notice. Gear is ready.
That makes all the difference.
Very cool.
Literally makes all the difference.
We also have an A rig and a B rig. So like if we're going to do that show a couple days before the tour starts, so we're using the B rig, so the A rig can then be in Seattle.
So they're already setting up at that next venue, or they're already ready.
No,
for the next venue.
Our gear will be ready, but it'll get flown out there like a week before.
Okay.
Yep.
So now, for guys that don't really know what a drum tech is, and I want to bring this point up too, you're actually a drummer.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're an actual musician.
Wait, let me interject here.
Okay.
I got to stop here. Time out. So when I met Wayne, he was actually the drummer for a band called the Love Dogs. Okay.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to tell you about this now. Hey, Love Dogs. Love you guys, man. Everybody except for Lance. Fuck you. You're a douchebag.
There's a story.
So there is a story, and I'll tell you about that too. So I love YouTube. So they had a drummer, okay, and he exited the band for whatever reasoning, right? But the Love Dogs, they were a 80s sleaze rock, just glam punk, playing LA Guns, and just a party band. Now Joey Bishop, rest in peace. I love that guy. He was one of my good friends. And then a couple other guys in the band. I mean, they drank a lot. Okay. So like before the show would go on, I would look at them and I'd think there's no way they're going to make it to the stage. And they would, and they'd get up there and they would play an amazing show. They were always on point. It was a party when they were playing. Okay. And so one day I show up and Wayne's on the kit. And I'm like, oh, you guys got a new drummer. Okay. And they said to me, shh, Anthony, he's not like us. And I go, what do you mean he's not like us? They're like, well, he doesn't drink and he's really religious. And I go, what? And they go, yeah, well, he does stuff with the church and drums and whatnot. And I go, how is that going to work with the Love Dogs? Right. And they go, no. So I go over, I introduce myself, Wayne, how you doing, man? I'm Anthony. And he's like, good to meet you. I'm like, it's a pleasure to meet you. Like I know you're going to try and keep this bus on the track.
Right.
And, he sat in, learned the songs, played the gigs. He was an amazing drummer. But, the Love Dogs, man, every time they went to a place, they ruined the green room. They destroyed it was just a party that was like straight out of 1987. So Lance, I'll talk about Lance. We're all friends. Like the Love Dogs are just, those are my boys, right? And I was there when they started, and Talon was their original drummer. Okay. I was there when they started. And one day I show up at the State Theater and they're playing a gig and everybody's partying and whatnot. And they take a break in between songs while they're like tuning guitars and whatnot. And Joey's running around pouring shots in people's faces. And this idiot gets up on the microphone and he goes, hey, I understand we have Anthony from Mayhem Magazine here. And I'm like, hey, and of course the spotlight hits me in the crowd. Sure. And he turns around and he goes, you're an effing clown. You're a piece of garbage. F you. And I'm just standing there and I'm like, and this is coming from where? Like it was literally out of left field. There was no warning, no nothing. And I had been promoting this band since the day they started. And everybody in the band was just as shocked. They had no idea. Like he just went off. It was like Lance didn't take his meds that day.
Wow.
And he just went off the rails.
Wow.
And after that, I said to him, yeah, Love Dogs are done, man. Don't call me for nothing. Don't call me for no promotions. Don't call me for nothing. And yeah, I was just out of left field. But anyway, hey Lance, how you doing? Love your new gig.
So anyway,
but that's how I met Wayne. He is a drummer.
Yes,
and we met him at Love Dogs. I have to ask, as a sober person at the party,
yeah,
how did that work out for you?
I broke up a lot of fights.
Now, are you sure there's nothing that you're not comfortable talking about?
No,
okay,
fine.
No, I mean, and I'll tell you, Raven and Joey and everybody in the band, they were great, man. They were awesome people. But whew, the amount of alcohol and party that they consumed was unreal.
It's crazy in the music industry, and I'm sure in the entertainment industry in general. There are those people who can do things, whether it be alcohol, whether it be drugs, whatever, and be magnificent at their craft. And then there are those others who, I can't do this like that. You know, I don't know where that line is or what that is. It's just incredible to me, the things that people can do under the influence
here's
of
the funny
whatever.
thing. Back in the 80s, that was acceptable, right?
Yeah, I remember.
It was nothing for Slash to be up on stage laying next to the speaker playing guitar, right? But it's funny because now, as we're a little older, and these guys are on tour, when I get their riders and I see their stuff backstage, and it's like, 3 cases of Evian water, and like that. Everything is, we want grilled chicken and Caesar salads, and and they show up and they have their kids with them.
Right.
Like it's a different party now.
It's another
it's completely
thing
different
altogether.
And the funny thing is a lot of these musicians, they take their crafts much more serious now than they did 25 years ago, which is where we're going to bring this conversation with you. So one of the things that I had known about Wayne a long time ago was you apparently drum tech for Tommy Lee.
Yeah. For
Girls.
Yeah, 89. Yeah.
Was that not the height of the party?
That was pretty cool. Yeah.
That was the strip club, theme song.
Pretty much, but
I was lucky enough to.
How did you get that gig?
The town that I grew up in, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. That's where Mountain Productions is, and Mountain Productions was doing all the staging for all these major tours, and so of course all my friends worked there, and they're like, "Hey, you want to come out and work some concerts?" And so I worked Guns N' Roses and Whitesnake, and And when we did the Motley Crue show, it's like I just befriended, Tommy's tech at the time. Spidey was his name, and he just took me under his wing and like taught me how to be a drum tech, and it was great. It was.
He taught you how to be a drum tech. So was that your entrance into?
I was 21 years old. I had toured as a drummer, and I had a drum tech prior to that, but I didn't know how to be a drum tech prior to that. You know what I mean? So
your first gig as a drum tech was Tommy Lee.
Yeah.
That's a
and it could not.
That's a hell of an entrance to a field.
Your mind brought you from where you were then to where you are now.
Yeah. So playing and touring with my bands, making no money, and I'm like, oh, there's money in this working for the big guys. So
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I mean,
so from there, I just it in this industry, it's all who you meet, who you know, and I tell everybody that anybody could be a drum tech or guitar tech and be good at it, but if you're an asshole and nobody wants to hang around with you, you're not going to get the gig. So you got to live on the bus with these people, and so just be cool, and that's a big part of it.
I've seen other interviews you've done where you've said that. The key to this is just be cool.
It's relationships.
Don't be an asshole.
So were you religious after Tommy Lee?
I wanted to correct you about that. So I have never been religious.
Really?
I was clean and sober when I was in
Right.
the Love Dogs, but I was never religious. So.
Were you doing stuff with a church?
Yeah,
at
I
the
was
time?
playing drums in a biker church. That's probably where they got
that's
that.
where they
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah.
Wait.
But,
Biker
I need
church?
to know what a biker church
A
is.
biker church?
It was very cool. Yeah, it
Okay.
was very cool.
Being the son of a minister that I am, I need to know what a biker church is. What is that?
Biking for Jesus?
Yeah, it was, man.
I believe that.
It was great. It was fun times. And yeah, so I was drumming for them, drumming for the Love Dogs. I was drumming for so many different projects at that time.
Wow.
But yeah, clean and sober, but never religious.
No, okay, all right. I would think, you cannot be too religious if you're on tour with Tommy Lee.
And by the way, I still hang around with Raven from the Love Dog. We go riding a lot, and he is sober now.
Really?
He's clean and sober. Yep, and he's doing
Wow.
That's a good
great.
thing.
He's doing great. I'm proud of him.
So now back
That's
to
great.
my original question, because
Hey,
what
Raven.
you do takes a lot of skill. And I'm sure that your experience as a drummer lends itself to you being excellent at what you do. So tell us, first of all, what is a drum tech? And second of all, what makes you as good at what you do as you are?
So the key job for a drum tech, not only like you set up his kit, you make sure it's in tune and everything. So you don't want him to have to worry about anything. His job is to get up there and play drums and not think about anything else. So I always make it so that Johnny never has to think about anything. In fact, Collective Soul never sound checks. When the first time Johnny sits behind his kit is when he gets on stage in front of people.
They don't sound check.
Nope.
That's amazing.
So he's 100% confident in me that when he gets up there and sits down, that everything is perfect. And, it has to be, because he doesn't get to go up there and check it beforehand.
So is it guitar check, sound check? Everybody sound checks before them, so they get there and just sit.
The
And
crew,
you understand his technique and his style and everything, so that when you're sound checking as him.
Yep. I know I have his exact mix in my ears. I know what he needs to hear. And
their sound engineer, obviously, he knows what they're going for as well, too. I mean, this is kind of like our other, where we were talking about sound, for venues. And I had mentioned like Prince, and his label hated him. He'd fire sound engineers like in the middle of the tour every time. If somebody didn't do something right, replace them now.
I've been on those tours like that where they fire people like that. Yeah. But all the crew that's with Collective Soul have been with them a long time.
And I'm sure that helps. So as a drummer and as a drum tech, you are primarily responsible for the basic sound of the band in general. Would that be an accurate
statement? Yeah. I mean, I'm responsible for the sound of the drums as far as tuning and stuff like that. But the rest of it's all, our front of house sound engineer and stuff like that, as far as the sound of the band.
Right.
But I just make sure that everything's just right for Johnny when he hits that stage. And then while he's on stage, I sit behind him. There's, times I have to swing his mic in and out when he sings, if anything falls or, there was one time in the middle of the song, his bottom head of his snare blew out.
Oh.
So, mid-song, I swapped snares. He never missed a beat.
You have one ready to go.
I always have a backup ready, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That would make a lot of guys.
I mean, you got to think, everybody out in the audience, they don't see that.
No, they don't. They absolutely. Now, how do you balance that and being the assistant manager on that stage as well? I mean, that's a lot of hats you got to wear simultaneously.
A lot of my a lot of my stage manager duties take place before the show happens. It's like where the risers get placed, where this goes, where that goes. And so that all gets taken care of long before showtime. So then I'm done with that job. Now it's drum tech time. You know what I mean? So
it's cool.
Amazing. Amazing.
Very cool.
Tell me the craziest thing that's ever happened to you in the middle of a concert that you've had to respond to.
I got a good one. So, I told you about Johnny's head blowing out. I had to swap snares. So I was teching for my buddy Jimmy DeAnda, who drums for Lynch Mob. Jimmy DeAnda, if anybody knows, he plays in his underwear.
Does he really?
Yeah.
Never knew that.
Every show?
Yeah. So
Tidy whities?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
But just pulls down and
Yep.
goes out on stage.
Yep.
There we go. That's behind the
Yep.
scenes right
He's
there.
a great guy. He's my buddy, Jimmy. And but the girls love it when he plays in his underwear. So so I'm behind him and his pedal broke.
Oh
So-
no.
I'm under there.
And you got to get.
I'm under fixing the pedal.
Oh man.
And Jimmy's right here.
Right here. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man.
And anybody that knows what drummers have to do back there knows there's a whole lot of sweating going on too.
Oh wow. Man,
Yeah.
I don't know. You were underpaid that day.
So anybody
Yeah, so-
who thinks that being in music business is all glamour,
Oh yeah.
Wayne has another story.
So
Yeah.
Lynch Mob is done, right? Didn't they
I don't
do their
know.
last show?
I'm not sure. I didn't hear anything about that.
I thought they were done. And actually one of our locals from Tampa was singing for Lynch Mob, Gabriel.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not
Gabriel
sure.
went out on tour with George Lynch. He was lead singer for them.
I know
Okay.
Jimmy
All right.
plays for a lot of people, so I know he'll stay busy no matter what.
Very cool. Very cool. So, okay, all right. So Tommy Lee, and then also you were doing Three Doors Down, which we
yeah,
all heard about, what's going on with them.
yeah. I mean, just gotta hope that Brad's gonna be okay, and I know he will be.
We're all praying.
He's a tough guy.
We're all praying.
But yeah, so I text for Greg Up Church with Three Doors Down. In fact, we did a tour together with Collective Soul. That's where Johnny and I met. It was
When you were with Three Doors Down?
I was with Three Doors Down. It was Three Doors Down, Collective Soul, and Soul Asylum. That was the tour. And so every day Johnny and I would talk, and when I was setting up Greg's kit stuff, and then a couple of years later, I get a phone call from Johnny Rabb. So that's it. It proves that it's the impression that you make. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Oh,
If
sure.
you're this miserable guy out there on tour that nobody likes, you're not going to get that phone call.
Nobody wants to work with a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Or high maintenance. But
Yeah.
so then like some of the other things, you worked with Whitesnake, Guns N' Roses, and of course Tommy Lee. So
Another thing that I wanted to mention is, so for 10 years in a row, I was a stage manager on 70,000 Tons of Metal cruise.
I was going to mention that.
I did all the Monsters of Rock cruises. So I teched for all those guys. There would be, 10 bands a day on my stage, and we provided all the backlines. So I would drum tech for every one of those guys.
Wow.
Because when they
Okay.
came on those cruises, they didn't bring their crew.
They didn't bring their stuff.
That was actually going to be one of my questions. When I see that you like the 70,000, the cruise, the 70,000 tons of metal. When you do that, it's your stage. The bands are just switching in and out.
Yep.
Right. But you provide the backline. Are they bringing their own drum set, and you have to set up a whole full kit every time, or is backline?
No, so here's how that works. So on 70K, I was not a backline guy. I was the stage manager. So there was a different backline company that provided all the backline for that. On Monsters of Rock, I worked for the backline company, so I provided all the backline. And to answer your question, we would bring, so there's 5 stages, the pool, the theater, which I was
Right.
always in the theater, and there's a couple other stages. About ice rink there's another stage. We would bring 5 complete drum kits, 1 for each stage, and everything from 8 to 18 toms, 4 bass drums for every kit. So we were ready for anything, and then just walls of Marshalls for every stage. And so they would only bring usually their cymbals and sticks.
Just like
we would provide.
Kind of like when we do a benefit here, and backlines provided, they just bring
Yeah.
their snare and cymbals and
Yeah.
pedals.
And you're just
Even-
making modifications
Yeah.
for each. Okay.
Even when Collective Soul does these cruises, we have another one coming up this year. We just bring like what we call our B rig. I'll bring one of Johnny's snares, a set of cymbals, our electronic pad, and they have our rider of what we require for a drum kit, so it's there and it's provided
It's
for
set
us.
up. Good.
Yeah, it's hard to get it on and off a boat. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
And that's a different atmosphere too. And you're dealing with a confined space of a specific crowd of people. So in comparison to what you're regularly touring, tell me what the differences are for you, you know.
Yeah, for us, it's not having our own gear. You know, we don't have our own amps, we don't have our own drum kit, and you got to make do with what's provided. You know, and sometimes it's not always the best. You know, and for me, it's like the ease of like Johnny's kit. I have everything memory locked and saved. You know, right where it's supposed to be. And now we get there with a backline kit. I got to get out the tape measure. And I got to figure everything out. You know what I mean? So it's a little different. It's a lot more work.
So I want you to answer a question. Okay. And if you kick me under the table, I will understand. But so I was told one day I went to a show and there was all these marshals on the stage, right? Probably 20 of them on the left, 20 of them on the right. And I'm standing there on the side of the stage. And I go, you know, it's funny because when you're in the audience and you hear the loud sound, it is what it is. It's concert. When you're on the side of the stage and you don't hear the sound like you do in front of the stage, I said to the guy that was next to me, who was part of the production crew, I said, there's no sound coming out of any of those marshals. And he goes, nah. He goes, go behind them. They're not even plugged in. I was like, what? Are a lot of the rock shows doing that for stage presence?
Yep.
So the sound is still going through the set. I mean, through the speakers, the house sound.
And there's always one or two real marshals. You know, you need something.
Right. You'll see one mic sitting in front of the marshals.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they're just props.
Yeah.
Visual. Yeah.
Props. You know, it's funny. I tell my son all the time. Okay. My son is 12 years old. And I say to him when we go to concerts now, like we just went literally like 2 weeks ago, we went to Halsey at the amphitheater.
Okay.
And I say, you know, when we used to leave a concert, our ears would ring for 3 days. and if it didn't, it wasn't that good of a concert. And I mean, you know, going and seeing Guns N' Roses at the Sun Dome, you know, where the sound bounces and echoes.
Everywhere, yeah.
And, you know, it literally is just deafening. It was deafening when you left that show. We always pushed our way to the front, you know, so we went and we never wore ear, you know, covers. Like we went home deaf for a couple of days. And I don't think they don't get that anymore.
Well, there's
decibel limits now.
There's dB limits now. And that's the reason, because of they learned from back in the day when everybody was going deaf and losing their hearing that, like, we got to put some limits on this. Like, it was cool because we were young.
Bring it back.
But it's really not. It's not good for anyone.
No, it's not good.
Well, then, you know, that's when they invented that phrase: "Loud does not mean good."
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. My partner, Jim Messina from Vintage Drum Talk. Jim has hearing aids now and he's a drummer, you know, and that was because stage volume and all of that, none of that was checked. No. You went out and you played, and when we were on stage, we didn't have, you know, monitors. The only time we had somebody doing the dB and all of that was if we were playing like at the Ritz-Carlton or at the Marriott or something, and they were setting sound levels. But if you're playing outdoors or you're playing any other venue, nobody's thinking about what the sound levels are. You went out there, you played, you sang, and you did whatever. Whatever the volume was what you lived with. But fortunately for a lot of people, they started to learn now that, you know, ears are important, because now he can't sing like he used to, great voice. He can't play like he used to because he can't hear like he used to. So it's a very important.
As a stage manager, are you conscious of that? Is that something you're like?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the stage manager's job to set the dB limits. It's, you know, our front of house audio guy has to deal with all that. But those limits are set. Even every amphitheater in the country,
the venue tells you this is your limit.
This is your limit. Yeah, I mean, it's you know, reasons for, you know, hearing, of course. Then there's houses within a quarter of a mile of the venue,
right?
Which is why there's a strict curfew. You have to be done at this time, and there's a fine if you go over this curfew. There's a fine if you go over this dB limit, and they're out there checking with the dB
with the meters,
meter. So, I mean, it's what today's day and age, like it wasn't like that in the 80s or the 70s, but
No.
it's like that now.
We did what we wanted.
Yeah.
Whatever
So,
we wanted.
with Bourbon Street, when I had that, I had they never really had a problem, with the noise. And then one day, some Karen moved into the neighborhood behind the place,
Right.
and all of a sudden, we had complaint after complaint after complaint. And Bourbon Street, the people that owned it before me, it was 4 times the size, right?
Right.
So when I had it, it was a third of what it was.
It used to be.
But yet we were still trying to put out the same amount of sound. And I had to be conscious of the dBs, right? And I had a meter that I would go behind the building, like into into this neighbor's yard, and have to hit it. And the authorities told me, we don't measure it from your parking lot. We measure it from across the street. And I said, okay, not a problem. So the one thing that I had to do was I had to get a restrictor that was in the closet, that it didn't matter what they did on the soundboard. It stopped it right there, right shy of whatever that volume, restriction was, the limit. And I can't tell you how many times, I'd get a sound guy that was, their sound guy on the road that they absolutely, in their rider had to have. And he would go in my closet and change it.
Yeah.
And I would go back there and I would clip it and change it back and tell them, dude, you can't,
and there are
can't touch
venues
it.
that will end what you're doing if you go and you mess with what they have set out, without a doubt. What that happened to 3rd Street one time, playing at the Marriott down in Naples. And our drummer went into the sound room and he changed the levels. And all of a sudden, management's running around with their dB meters, and then brought the band back and go, "This is a Marriott.
Yeah,
you don't touch
you can't touch it.
And Ray, of course, who was our band leader, Ray was like, won't happen again. But yeah, it's very strict now.
Yeah.
Even with, because I'm in the jazz genre, it's still a very strict thing. When I do those concerts downtown, 10 o'clock's your cutoff.
Yeah.
Go 10:01 and somebody's standing by you, getting ready to come down hard.
I know that Live Nation with the amphitheaters, they implement fines for every minute you go.
Yeah, $1,000 per minute.
Yeah, something like that.
Right. And for the metal genre, that's kind of counterintuitive in every possible way, right?
Yeah, it is.
Well, I mean, you look back at the 80s when Axl Rose used to show up 4 hours late for a concert. He can't do that now.
No.
You're done at 11:01.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. Well, it's a different story.
how about this on the road? And I know Collective Soul doesn't do stuff like this, but I know you've been with a ton of other bands, probably on that B circuit. Have you ever heard of or worked with any bands that will intentionally, like, they have a tally of blown speakers, like places they played, and they clip the system?
No, I've never encountered that.
Really?
No.
Okay, so here's what I heard.
It's the first I'm hearing
So
this.
come on. For real?
Counting blown speakers?
Yeah. You never heard that?
No.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw a name out. Taproot. Taproot comes through, and they were having a bad day. Like when they showed up for sound check, we would, they'd show up, they'd sound check around 3-4 o'clock. Then they'd leave and they'd come back around 9 o'clock ready for the show. And they come in, and when they got there at 3 o'clock for the sound check, like they all kind of had attitudes. Everybody had they had like a bad lunch or something. And, I was excited for them to be there. I was waiting to see them, for like the month or two before when we booked the show. And, they left after the sound check, and I was like, kind of
muted.
Okay. Well, let's see. I'm sure the show will be great. They always bring it when they play. And the sound guy that they brought in, he set up his board and patched into mine. And I was like, we have our sound guy. And he was like, dude, we will put our stuff back in the van right now if you want to question. And I'm like, it's not in your rider. It has nothing to do with this. These are the things we were told we had to provide. And he was like, dude, one more word and we'll put everything in the van. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever, bro. And they did. And at the end of the night, I had 4 hanging PV speakers up in the rafters, and every one of them were rattling. just rattling. So when they left that night, I heard one of the sound guys when they were joking about a bunch of stuff. He said, "Yep, got another one," and they left. And somebody said to me, "You know what they meant, right? They meant they got another one." In other words, if they show up at a venue and they don't like the venue, or somebody treats them bad, or something's bad, they're like, "Boop," and they blow it right at the end, right by the end of the show. They'll just clip it, and your speakers are going to rattle, and then they keep a tally like of how many they blew on their tour.
Interesting. Huh.
And yeah. And I asked a couple other bands like on that B circuit, like, you guys clip any speakers? And they're like, yeah, but we're not going to do that tonight. Huh. You're safe, fam. We like you. I was like, really?
Yeah, thinking back, most of my tours, we've always traveled with our own PA. So we never,
never had that.
Never wanted to hurt our own PA. So.
Yeah. But, it's funny because I had bands that would show up. And one of the things that about the sound system at Bourbon Street, right? So we had PV speakers, okay? And PV in the 80s was... That was the stuff, right? That was the stuff. Yeah. But then PV got a bad reputation for being junk, okay? And there was other stuff that people were going to. And at this time, everybody was really kind of going over to digital. Everybody was going to the digital Behringer 32 board. And, I have to say one of my, if there was ever the biggest monster thank you that I could ever give anybody was Jason Taylor. Okay, Jason Taylor came in and rewired and redid everything for our sound system to where it was set for the room and it was done correctly. And and Jason, a billion thank yous. But Jason came into Bourbon Street and probably spent 3 days there just redoing everything, testing every wire, testing everything, because it didn't matter what we did. There was a crackle or something going on with the sound. And that's stuff you probably deal with all the time, right? Yeah. You have to hunt down that little click, wherever it's showing up.
Yeah.
And so we got it to the point where, yes, there were PV speakers in the rafters, but it sounded perfect. Okay. And it didn't matter what genre of music, like it sounded great, loud and low.
Right.
And even Eric Brittingham from Cinderella and Jeff LaBar, when they came in, Eric said every year he loved coming back to Bourbon Street because the sound was amazing. And we had a Yamaha board. Like, I know you were there. You remember our setup. It was an older analog setup, but it was one of those things where it sounded, the tone, everything coming out of it was just the way we wanted it. So yes, there was new modern stuff on all the new places that were opening and closing as fast as they opened, but we had that tone that everybody just kind of, they loved. And, when people would come in and they were used to clipping into like the Behringer boards, right? They had a USB plug where they would just show up and they would click it and all the settings went to right for their tour, whatever they had. They didn't have to sit there and check everything. They just hit a USB port and it went in and digitally put everything right where it was supposed to go. We didn't have that. They actually had to set it. So some of the sound guys, they didn't like that. So if they showed up and they were like, ugh, PV with a Yamaha amp, and they just get real like right away, I already ruined their day.
Yeah.
I ruined their day. And I would say to them, do me this, set your band up, plug in, and adjust, but listen to how it sounds as is right now before you do anything. And 50% of the time I'd have people go, oh yeah, that sounds great. I just had to make a few changes. But then most of the time they would always say, oh dude, it sounds amazing the way it is. And they would just make certain changes based on what instrument, right? But off the initial walk in, you could just see their face. Oh, PV. And I'd be like, what do you want? Behringer? Like, that's the bottom of the line. Like, really, seriously. I mean, it was just, I could see the way that they came in and saw and then reacted. But,
all bands have a preference. I mean, everybody's got a preference and you got to meet them somewhere in the middle. Yeah. There's just no way around that. But all bands love a room that's got a great sound. And you will flock to that every single time.
And it's funny you say that, a room that has a great sound. You deal with this. When a band shows up to play, especially like a cover band on a Friday night, They set the music up. They set up the sound for them. They never set the the volume and everything up for the room. And again, I got to give props. Jason Taylor, his son is running sound for the Bearded Brothers, right? So not only does he set up the sound for the band, they do their sound check, but that throughout the sets, he's in the back of the room and walking the whole room with a tablet,
Right.
Adjusting
Making sound
not
adjustments.
for the guitarist, but for the room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that a lot of sound guys don't do. They set up for the band, not the room.
Nowadays, you've got sound companies that do exactly that. They're out there with their tablets, making sure that the room or the venue has that specific
and that's a
quality of
huge
sound.
difference
It's
between
a major
a
difference.
company and who'll run sound for Mr. Biggles on Friday night at Sneaky D's. That's what we get. But so you don't have to deal with that because you're on tour. You're setting stuff for amphitheaters and big venues.
And our front of house guy does walk around with that tablet all over the venue, different parts of the venue.
Even in the big venues.
Yep, he does. Yep.
Wow.
To get a quality, for you to sound like what you need to sound like, you've got to have a guy out there making sure he's making that sound.
He wants it to sound as good up there as it sounds
right
down
there.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about tour. And Friday night you play somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday night you play somewhere, and then you're probably off Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, right?
So the days of the week mean nothing to us. So we just don't do more than 3 in a row. So we'll do 3 in a row and have a day or 2 off. It's just my singer can't do more than 3 in a row. He has to rest his voice for at least a day. So the 3 days on, 1 or 2 off is our standard, and that's what we stick to. And the days of the week mean nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the coolest city you've ever been in? And I've seen your photos throughout where you go.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've traveled the world.
Yeah. Coolest city was, I never remember if it's Queenstown or Queensland, New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yeah.
Queensland.
Queensland, the south of New Zealand. Yeah.
You like Australia?
Well, it's totally different from Australia. New Zealand.
New Zealand?
New Zealand is, even though they're close.
Yep. Different cultures altogether.
Everything on Australia wants to kill you. There's nothing in New Zealand
that wants your life, right?
Okay. I am not smarter than a 5th grader. Fairly. Okay. So why is that city the coolest?
It's just many things. So the beautiful scenery, the mountains, we hiked everywhere. The people, the way people treat each other there, and after coming from America, it's, everyone's just not out for themselves and everyone looks out for each other. It's a nice thing to go experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I know I've referenced this before, but my son and I, every summer we do a thing called Dudecation, where we just start traveling. We just go places. I mean, there's a lot of times we get in the car and we just drive, and then my wife is like, "Where are you going?" We're like, "We don't know. We're going to stop when we run out of gas.
We'll call you when we
just
get
drive,
there."
right?
Yeah.
And, or like we tell her we're going to Jacksonville. And then like 3 days later, "Where are you?" "We're in New Orleans." And she's like, "What?" But I will say that traveling around with no expectations and just going places, when you show up, like for you, it's a job, right? Mm-hmm. It's work. You go somewhere, you work, but then you have downtime. Just seeing things, just going out and exploring a city with no plans. Like, hey, where's the cool place to go? You guys are starting your tour in Washington, right? Mm-hmm. We went last year, we went to Seattle because we did an Alaskan cruise. And when we got to Seattle, people were like, "Oh, you got to go to Pike's Market." Mm-hmm. Okay, so we get on a Pike's Market. Like, what's to see? "Oh, well, they throw fishes." And we're like, "What?" "Well, that's a big thing. You got to go there and you got to see them throw fishes." "Okay. Why?" And then they go, "Oh, you got to go to Starbucks." I'm like, "Why? We get Starbucks in Tampa." And they're like, No, it's the original Starbucks. The original so you stand in line for like 2.5 hours to buy a Starbucks coffee, which is no different than the one you get in Tampa. But you were at the original brand, Starbucks.
But you don't see people standing in line to go to Hooters.
Nope.
Nope.
That's the original one.
I have stood in line to go to Hooters. But so then the other thing that I thought was just crazy in Seattle was they say, well, the other thing you can do is you can go see the gum wall. And I go, the what? Right? Have you been there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like you go down in like some little alleyway thing, and underneath like an overpass thing is a wall that everybody sticks their gum on. And we just took a picture in front of it, and I was like, oh,
why did we do that? Yeah, of course.
It's disgusting. It stinks like 400-year-old gum.
I think one of the greatest things, particularly when you're in the entertainment business, is when you travel to all these different cities and different countries and whatever have you. You're experiencing different cultures, even if it's continental in the United States. But your music or what you do brings people together no matter what, no matter where you go. So when you're in Europe or in Asia or whatever have you, are you experiencing the same kind of, adulation and acceptance and understanding that you get from being here at home?
Yeah. It's even amplified in other countries. Your audiences are way bigger, and it's more people coming together the way you just said, as opposed to in the United States. It's not uncommon in these other countries to get 50,000 people, or where in the United States you get 10. You know what I mean? So, but yes, and it really those shows we did in New Zealand with Simple Minds and Pseudo Echo, and I mean the crowds are huge. Yeah.
The other thing I heard about bands that travel overseas, they get out of America, is in America here, when you go to a concert, everybody has their phone up.
Yeah.
When you go to other countries, they enjoy the music. They enjoy the concert.
Nobody has their phone.
Right. Yeah,
They're not trying to record every minute of it.
Yeah, because you're not getting any of
that really hit home for me when I was watching some videos of the Pantera reunion when they first went out, seeing all their shows from Europe, and just the walls of death, and just the biggest crowds I've ever seen and the biggest mosh pits I've ever seen. And then when they hit the States and I was seeing those videos of everybody holding their phones, I was like, cultural difference.
It's a total cultural difference. It really is. Now, you're primarily, because we talked about this before, you're primarily rock and roll, metal, that kind of thing. But you also have some experience with other types of music genres, right?
Yeah.
So talk about some of those and the differences that you've experienced professionally outside of the genre that you've become accustomed to or proficient at.
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things that I've noticed is just, it's not even across genres, but just in time, how the kits have shrunken down. The 80s kits used to be so huge, especially in rock and metal. And everybody's just shrunken way down, it's simplified. And
wait, when you say shrunken down, what do you mean? The crowd size?
No, the kit. The drum kit.
So that's all.
The drum kit.
Yeah. A lot of people doesn't have, 12-piece kits anymore, it's, and especially even if they are slightly bigger in the rock and metal genres, when you start working for like jazz and stuff like that, those kits are much smaller,
Yeah. Goes well with a 3-piece.
Yeah. And they don't have a wall of fake Marshalls.
Very true. Very, very true.
I'm glad I asked that question.
So now, if there was another genre outside of rock, and you could say, well, hey, take a break from the rock, pick another genre that you would really love to tour with, what would that be? In your mind's eye, what would that be?
So for me, I go to who has the most money? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it'd be like the mainstream pop stuff, because those tours, you get on a tour with somebody like, I don't know, Taylor Swift, you're being taken care of.
Didn't she give everybody in her crew $100,000 bonus?
No,
$100,000 bonus.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's not
well,
bad.
That kind of goes back to, one of the stories you were telling about, what you get paid now
As opposed
where
to the
some
beginning.
bands are trying to pay you that for a whole week. You
Yeah,
get paid that per day, right?
But again, that goes back to genres. So like, I have so many friends in the metal genre and that play in bands and stuff, and it's just a much smaller budget. That's all. They're just not pulling in the kind of money that these other mainstream bands are, and it's unfortunate. But I mean, they can only do what they can do. I mean,
Are they not getting the venues? Are they not getting the crowds? What seems to be driving that reality?
It has to be the crowds. It has to be the popularity or the lack of it. Like, I mean, there's lots of diehard metalheads out there. We're still alive, but you're not gonna get 20,000 people in America.
No.
And it's sad, but it's
Well, I mean, you look at perfect example are bands like Rabb.
Right.
Stephen Pearcy and Warren DeMartini, they just reunited, and they did that at the M3 festival in Maryland, right? And now they're going on tour, and they're playing Fergs in St. Pete. Okay.
Yep.
Of course.
Stephen Pearcy.
And you think about that, and you go.
I had Stephen booked for Bourbon Street in Newport Richey, and then after we closed down and shut the doors down, he ended up going up to, another little bar up in Newport Richey, and those guys aren't playing rooms that they used to.
Right.
And you're talking Rabb. Yeah. You're talking LA Guns. You're talking, like now their sweet spot is like Janice Landing.
Yep.
That's it. And how many people does Janice hold?
I'm not sure.
5,000 maybe?
Maybe if that.
Okay.
Maybe that.
So and they bring it, like even like Seven Dust. Seven Dust, they hit a level that was Janice Landing. That's kind of where they got stuck. I mean, they have a 20 freaking monster CD, albums. Every one of them is better than the last one. They have carved a niche for themselves with a fan base that is strong. I mean, their fan base is loyal. I mean, they've been, their kids are coming out to shows now, right? But yet Seven Dust never got over that arena hump, right? So when you look at, and they did in certain areas, they could go if they were on a show with other bands, but just a Seven Dust show, they sell out everywhere they go, but they kept themselves in smaller venues, not smaller bars, but smaller venues like a State Theater or or a Janice Landing type stuff. Like, to me, I think they could sell out the amphitheater. I think they could do that easy. Okay. But they don't do stuff like that unless they're on tour with other people. And that may be just a strategy of theirs business-wise.
It's not always them either, because you have to take into consideration those promoters have to put together a show that they can guarantee there are going to be a certain amount of paid, participants. And which leads me to this question for you. Where do you see your area of music going from where you are right now? What does the future 5 years from now look like in your mind's eye? What do you think?
I mean, for this genre, it just seems to just now be making a huge comeback. So I think in 5 years, it's just going to keep going up. And I know, like, for my band, they're not quitting. They're putting out a new album every year, and they're not stopping. So I think it's going to just continue to climb. And you put together tours where you get a few of these 90s bands together, and I mean, people are loving it. They're selling out.
Yeah,
the tickets are selling.
But we also got to look. Collective Soul is not heavy metal. They're not heavy rock. They're rock.
It's that 90s rock,
but it's not 90s rock. Yeah. And they're like that mainstream where every song they did was a hit. Every song they did was on the radio, and it was great, right? But it was kind of like quietly great. They did not break that, they didn't draw too much attention to themselves.
Sure.
They were not like Creed or Motley or, a lot of those other bands that came out and, blasted the door down. And it's funny because it's kind of like those other bands, they had their heyday, and Collective Soul is still doing it. Like they did Slow and Steady wins the race type thing.
Yeah.
And everywhere they go, they sell out, and their music to everybody in our our age group, they go to those shows.
So now with that, because that's the other part of it too. Do you see your crowds? Do you see the generations cycling through?
Oh, yeah.
Are you getting younger and younger people?
Yep. Everybody's bringing their kids and their grandkids to the shows. Yep.
So you do see a younger crowd coming.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, because that's how you stay alive. I mean, if you don't have that generational shift, or advancement, it peters out with guys like us. Once we're gone, it goes.
And it's also great the way they're putting these tours together, like this year with Live and Our Lady Peace. Like last year we did it with Hootie.
Mm-hmm.
Year before that we went out with Switchfoot, and it's
you're crossing over.
Yeah, putting these tours together like that. We're in early 2026. We're playing the Creed Cruise. We're doing that one. So I think it's just going to continue. I mean, just putting together packages like this, tours like this it's always. I don't think it's ever going to die out.
No.
I mean, I hope not.
No. Okay, so you did tell a story, but I will mention something that we had when we spoke with Alicia last time. He had said that toured with Julio Iglesias, and 70 and 80-year-old women were throwing their big, huge bras on stage, right? So you don't get much of that at Collective Soul, huh?
No, we don't get too many bras on stage.
Pretty reserved yacht rock crowd.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the fans that are a little overzealous, but there's not many of them. You know what I mean? Like, thankfully.
Thankfully. But here's the other thing, and I have to laugh. Back in the 80s when we were backstage, it was just absolute mayhem backstage.
Debauchery.
With, drinks and drugs and half naked people, right? Now, what does backstage look like now?
Looks just like this.
Everybody's on their phone.
Yeah, everybody.
That's incredible.
Cases of Evian water and grilled chicken, Caesar salads.
Yep.
Well, living through it has its advantages.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thankful to still be here. Like,
right.
A lot of my friends didn't make it. So
now here you are, 30 years doing this.
Mm-hmm.
How much longer is Wayne going to be doing this?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going till I can't go anymore.
That's a good
thing. Till the wheels fall off.
Till the wheels fall off.
And that's more. That's definitely more of the rock and roll guys. We're gonna ride this thing into the burning barn. I think that's incredible, because a lot of guys now are, I want to get out, or want to, but it seems like the rock and roll guys, they're going to keep doing rock and roll till their hearts just stop.
None of us know what to do with ourselves when we're home. Like, we just, if we're not on a bus, like, we don't even feel like ourselves, So
what do you do when you're not on tour? What do you do?
So I have other companies that I work for locally and stuff, doing backline for I go out and do other tours with other bands.
Biker church groups.
It's been quite a few years since I did that, but I did do that. Another interesting thing that I do, and when I'm not on tour with the band, is I work for a company that moves museum exhibits around the world.
Oh, come on.
So they send me all over the world to install and take out these traveling museum exhibits, which it's a lot like moving a band. So, it all starts with lighting and audio and projectors everywhere, and
what type of museum stuff though?
Traveling. A lot of them are children's museum hands-on.
Okay. Interactive.
Interactive stuff.
Kind of like Mosey type things.
It's something that would go in Mosey,
right,
and then live there for a few months, and then move on to somewhere else. And
this guy does a lot of stuff, man. Come on, that's incredible.
And I've done these exhibits in so many different countries. It's taken me all over the world. So, yeah, I keep busy.
That's
I didn't
amazing.
expect that.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah, that's something brand spanking new.
I didn't expect that.
No,
nobody thinks about that. Traveling museum exhibits. Somebody has to do that. Somebody has to load them in and load them out.
Absolutely.
Set them up.
Man.
Set them up. Yeah.
Yeah, that I wasn't ready for that. I'm glad I asked that question. Wow. Who knew that was a thing?
Who's the best person you've ever worked for, other than Johnny Rabb?
Man, I can't.
Because I know you're going to say Johnny
Rabb.
Rabb. No. Other than Johnny Rabb, who's the best person you ever worked with?
Man,
the coolest.
So many good stories with Robert Sweet from Striper, Carmen Appice, Vinny Appice, all those guys, man. Just there was times when I was teching for some of these guys, and I just have to pinch myself, like, you know. I'd sit behind Carmen Appice, and he's playing the Mob Rules, and I'm like,
how did I get here?
Am I dreaming?
Who was the drummer for Whitesnake when you were with him?
What? Aldridge, Tommy Aldridge.
Was it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, we got to get him on our show. Tommy's one of the coolest things. I see some of the YouTube clip, not YouTube clips, the TikTok videos, and the Instagram videos that he puts out where he's playing some of the old Ozzy stuff. And
such energy, that guy.
Man, at his age, for him still to just be banging those songs out like he did, it's amazing. But so I asked who the best was, right? And who was the worst? Who was? I mean, come on, you got to dish some dirt.
Let's see.
Who was somebody that was really kind of high maintenance, expected a lot from you? Like, you know.
I mean, they all expect a lot from you, but I know what you're saying.
No, not nightmare. I don't want to use that because that's like saying who was a dick. I don't want to say that.
You know,
but who expected a lot from you that was they really pushed you to limits work wise.
I can't,
which is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, but a name does not pop into my head. Like
nobody was high maintenance.
Everybody's high maintenance. That's the thing. It's like you can't just pick one. It's not really about that. It's like if you do your job as a tech, then nobody is an asshole to you. You know what I mean? Like I would think that
you made in the beginning.
If anybody was ever like that to me, it would be because I wasn't doing my job. So I can't think of an instance where that happened.
Well, you know what? That speaks volumes about your professionalism. What you do. That speaks volumes.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the stuff that you see; it's the stuff that you don't see. Because if you're doing your job, nobody notices it. When you don't do your job is when it becomes a thing. Absolutely.
Well, they say professionalism is not shown in how well you do your job. It's how well you do your job when things go wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
And then what? Never let them see you sweat.
Yeah. Put out those fires.
Yep. Unless somebody's bottom goes out, you got to crawl underneath there.
Yeah. One of the other things that I wanted to kind of touch on was you talked about in one of your interviews that you've done in the past, how the music industry changed from COVID. And you guys, everybody got shut down, no shows, and everybody was home.
Yep.
And one of the things that you had touched on was, you know, yes, everybody did start to go a little stir crazy, you know, everybody was stuck at home, but then you started doing smaller type online music things.
Yeah.
Or some of the artists were doing online type music things.
Right.
How did you shift at that time from a white clean calendar to what you were doing for work?
Yeah.
Because there was no work, but you found ways to get going again.
I found ways. So one of the things I did was I had some friends who worked for the WWF wrestling, WWE wrestling, and they were doing all their stuff. If you watched any of it, on, you know, it was all, the audience was video screens.
Yeah, they were at Tropicana Field. And they had cardboard people.
Yeah.
Like for the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And then they had a screen where you could log in and then your face would show up and you could watch it online in the crowd.
So one of the jobs that I got during that time was watching this screen of the people at home, and I was able to get rid of them before they appeared on television. So if somebody was at home drinking a beer, you don't want that on television. Or if somebody's sitting at their computer and their face is dark because they didn't have their light on, like, you don't want that on television. So you just swipe them.
So you were policing the crowd.
Policing what went on television.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but then it was quickly realized that everybody needed to get vaccinated to get back on the road. So all these tours were getting ready to go out and getting ready to start traveling again, but everybody was required to be vaccinated. So you had to do it, whether you wanted to or not, whether you believed in it or not, because you needed to get back to work and you needed to get on an airplane and fly somewhere. So,
yeah, that was rough. A lot of people in the healthcare industry, they were told, take it or you're done. Right. No job.
Yeah.
So now, being on this side of it, what do you think was your biggest takeaway from going through that period that work could go? What did you take from that?
Yeah. Just don't have all your eggs in one basket. Be ready. Have a backup plan. One of the things that was kind of nice about the whole thing was I think we all realized we worked too much. It was so nice to be home and spend time and not work so much. But then as soon as it was over, we all fell right back into it again. Like we didn't learn a lesson. And now we're all working too much again.
Entertainment never stops, though.
Right.
It will never stop.
But not only in our business, but in every business, everybody just went right back to, working 60 hours a week or whatever they do. And during that, we were saying how nice it was and that we shouldn't do that anymore. And here we are.
Yeah, here you are. So tell me, for Wayne, when you're just trying to be you, I'm off the road, I've got a little time on my hands, I'm not trying to work, what are you doing?
Yeah. So a lot of different things. My girlfriend and I, we love taking the Harley out. We'll get on it like you do in your car and we'll just go. No destination, see where we end up. And so we love that. We do that a lot. We do a lot of kayaking. We like to go hike in the woods, all kinds of stuff like that. We both work out a lot, go to the gym and train. And, that's all the things we like to do in our downtime. Yeah.
One of the things that I see a lot with the rock crowd, not so much the jazz crowd, but the rock crowd is they're so embedded in the loud party that is their job, that when they get their downtime, they're very quiet people. Like you say, we just want to go and kayak and we just want to get on the bike and go somewhere. And you'll take a 3-hour ride on the bike to go get a cheeseburger.
Right.
Yeah. And just same thing as with John Blackwell with Prince. The guy would go and play for hundreds of thousands of people and then come back and go to a pier in Madeira Beach and go fishing off the pier.
Yep.
And nobody even knew who he was. He just showed up with a fishing pole and a bucket. And yet 3 nights before he was on the Grammys, somewhere. A lot of the what do they say? The bigger the star, the more humble they are. And those guys, when they come off tour, just want to be, they love their.
You gotta have that balance.
That solitude. A lot of the guys in jazz, I was really surprised, the bigger they are. Golf is like a big thing. These guys love to go out and play golf. And I think it has to do with the fact that that's being as far away from the mayhem, if you don't mind, of your life and what that entails, because you're out there in nature and doing a very unmusical thing.
I don't.
No, you should come out with me one day. I'm horrible.
I'll be like Happy Gilmore.
Bro, I am horrible. I am horrible. I hit the ball off the third tee, and then they're like, "Where's the ball?"
hole?
Yeah. I hit the ball off the third tee, and they're like, "Where is it?" I'm like, "On the fifth one."
I like the Harley thing myself, and I don't ride. I used to work for PAC Publishing, which is Night Moves Magazine. I was the promotions and marketing director.
Night Moves Magazine.
Absolutely, you remember those days. And
Paul and Tracy.
Yeah, and
hey Paul,
Full Throttle. Hey Paul.
Hi
hey,
Tracy.
Love you. Full Throttle Magazine. I mean, those guys were just great, and when they would go on those rides, man, and I would just sit back feeling kind of, jealous because I wasn't someone who rode, and I always said to myself, I'm going to get out there one day.
Hey, you could have been the biking preacher, man.
Oh,
you could have been,
Yeah. I could have been, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. I don't see that happening anytime soon, you know?
See, every time we do one of these, I learn something else about him. Last time I hear that he, his dad, when he was a kid, he was singing and dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Singing.
Yeah. I have a story in the past.
Yeah, right.
We're not going to talk about a lot of that.
I'll get something out of him. But yeah, it's definitely a road where they go on the road. It's craziness out there. It's all insanity, controlled chaos.
Right.
But then when they come off, it's quiet time.
Yeah.
Do you do any work with younger people at all? I mean, I'm sure that in your wealth of experience, you see younger guys coming along. There are things that you're going to impart to them. Certainly the fact that if they're not being an asshole, that they can work really well.
Yeah.
But, with today's technology and with the way the music industry has changed, I mean, a lot of the changes aren't even musical. They're just changes in general. Are there things or opportunities for you to impart your experience to younger people? And is that something you'd even be interested in doing?
I always do. Every time I get a chance to help. If somebody wants to learn, I would love teaching. Yeah. So, whether it's drum teching or anything in the music industry, or a lot of young people that I get to work with the museum exhibits, and just to teach them the ropes and somebody's got to do it when I can't do it anymore. So,
of course, because we can't take it with us.
So, two of the things that I know that we definitely want a little bit of info on. Obviously, we know your endorsed Warren Star clothing, right?
Yep.
How long have you been with them?
Oh, years.
Yeah.
I don't know how many numbers of years, but yeah.
They always have cool stuff.
Stefan and Sylvia are just good friends of ours, and they take care of us, and
they definitely have made their little niche in the rock crowd. Very cool stuff. And then Scorpion Percussion.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, what Scorpion Percussion is doing with you, as far as, like, I saw the sticks, the lime green sticks that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a couple pair in the car for you guys.
Oh man.
So the lime green that you see is their, it's like a sticky, grip. Scorpion, they make a great drumstick, and they're really moving up in the market. They're endorsing so many top artists now, and just good quality sticks. I became friends with Doug, and I met him through another company that I'm endorsed by, is Dirtbag Clothing, and so John from Dirtbag and Doug from Scorpion. Anything I need, like, they're there for me. My signature sticks with Scorpion, I designed them.
That's cool.
Yeah. 2BX.
2Bs and 17 inches long. I think they're the longest ones they make. So they're billy clubs.
Why did you go with a 17-inch stick? Why that long?
I don't do anything technical when I play. I just hit hard. So I just needed a couple of baseball bats is what I needed. I don't, like, Johnny is so technical and so great at all that stuff, and I try, and
what does Johnny play?
He has his own Johnny Rabb drumsticks.
Right.
His own company. His are 5B, I think. Okay. 5B.
Wow.
And but yeah, he's so technical and so good, and I just hit things hard. That's
Bam
all I
Bam
do.
from the
Flintstones. That's
Flintstones.
exactly like a caveman back there.
It's kind of funny because as a drummer myself, I've found that depending on what you're playing is kind of the way I grab my sticks. If it's a rock, I want it to be chunky and hard, and I will grab a thicker stick. If it's, something that's not rock, a little less, you're not trying to beat the hell out of the drums, then I take a thinner stick, and a smaller stick. And like you use the word technical, I just say, I'm not trying to kill it. It's not a loud sound.
Right.
But, it's still, and every stick feels completely different in your hand, and you play different according to what's in that feel.
Yeah.
So I know some people are like, this is all I play is this stick, and it doesn't matter what changes,
Even
that's
if
the
they're playing
stick
a
they
different
play.
genre, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, I actually grab different sticks for different stuff. And like for a while, I really loved the ahead ones, the plastic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know,
I used
the
them for a while
graphites,
too, yeah.
you know, the Tommy Lees were
And they
great
had
because
the
they were
plastic
real
sleeves.
chunky.
Yeah.
And I did that because for a long time, you know, you could beat the hell out of them and they didn't break.
Right.
Okay.
Understood.
I mean, they were
Yeah.
good, but they were cymbal wreckers.
Yeah.
You know, I noticed all my cymbals had like little dents
Cracks
and divots in
yeah.
them. And
Lars uses those too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, you know, I kind of grabbed different stuff, but when I saw yours, the lime green ones, and you know, now you say they're 17 inches long. That's pretty long. Stick,
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
That's
I'll
cool.
get that.
That's cool.
Hey, it's great that you still have the energy to want to play like that too.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at his age.
We ain't gonna go there. We're not gonna.
I can't pick them up anymore.
Well, you know, and talking about age, you know, you did say like, you know, with all the jokes, you know, you're going to do this till the wheels fall off the bus. Are you seeing in the industry, are you seeing younger people getting into stage teching and whatnot?
Yep.
Band support?
Yep.
So there is a younger generation coming up.
There is. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that we talked about in our last show was some of the younger drummers that are coming to light now are the girls.
Yeah.
There's a lot of girls that are just crushing it. But, you know, one of the things that we've also noticed is, you know, a lot of the other than drums, a lot of the other instruments, the kids in school aren't getting banned like they used to. Or, you know, the music stores, like they have School of Rock now is one of the big, you know, music lessons places. And, but there's such a small group of younger kids that are learning to play. So where does that put our music industry 10 years from now, right? But if you're seeing a younger group of kids coming in now, the 20-somethings that are behind the scenes, stage handing and you know, whatever they're doing, they're lighting and whatnot. Are you seeing that they're a little more trained, like from Full Sail University? In other words, this is something that's a career path for them.
Yep.
See, like when you started out, it was who you knew. Right. And hey, kid, push that, you know, that case across the stage and plug it in. Yep. You know, our generation, they weren't classically trained. They just got a job for the summer. You know,
well, I think that's changing now, Joan, which is why I asked you a question about what you would like to be able to impart to a younger generation. It's up to us. It really is up to us. Clearwater Jazz, that's what we do, music education. That's what Uptown, you know, Music and Arts Festival, that's education. The Florida Smooth Jazz Foundation, that's education. These are all big concert things that their focus is on the next generation. And a lot of them have those components where they include that technical support angle in it. Yeah. The backstage guys, because you know you can't have a show without that. Right. Okay. You can put the best guys up on a stage, but if you don't got their backup there, they're not doing anything. And
it can't die with us.
And it can't die with us. So, you know, I think that is our responsibility because it's not in our schools anymore. Kids aren't learning what they used to. We are now responsible and I believe charged with the responsibility to make sure that what we know, what we've learned is passed on to the next generation.
Again, we started out butchering Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on violin. Right. They're not even doing that anymore.
No, not at all. You know? Not at all.
My son goes to a school and they had a band there and it was like, you know, who wants to play drums? 20 kids, you know, went in there and they, I want to say interviewed, they auditioned for that spot, but the kid that's playing drums for them is the same kid that played drums for the last 2 years, and he got the spot, and there was no backup
and there was nothing else.
There was no 4 other drummers on stage. It was just that you either got it or you didn't. So the school may have had 20 kids that wanted to be in band, but they just
only
took the
one guy is going to get that gig, right?
And at that point, it's kind of like they did away with that whole music department. You know, where for us, when we went in, there was 20 saxophone players and 20 violinists and you know,
trumpeters and drummers.
They don't do that. It's just not the way things are done now.
It really is.
It's
which is a
cool, though.
good idea because that collection of drums you got.
Never getting rid of it. I'll be buried with it. I'll be buried with it. My son even says to me, Dad, can we set up the drums? I go, no. And he's like, well, when can I play? I'm like, when I'm dead. They're yours when I die, not a day before. You know?
You need to set up a little drumming school in your garage. That's
Nope.
what you need to do.
Nope. I don't have patience. I do not have patience. I tried to teach a kid to play drums once. Didn't work out. But but it's good to see that especially behind the scenes, that there's a younger group of kids that are coming through.
Yep. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of them on every tour. I'm seeing younger and younger people.
Well, they're
they're
more technically savvy.
They're coming out of Full Sail or whatever. They're not coming on as entry level. They're running front of house or whatever. They're already
specialized.
They know their shit. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any that you guys bring up through the ranks to teach?
I mean, like I said, anybody who asks me anything, I'm always glad to teach them. But I mean, we don't. In fact, this year coming out on tour with us is our singer Ed. He's bringing out his sons to teach them the ropes.
Good.
And they'll be
learn the business,
helping us all backstage. Yeah. Yeah.
See, like the old days when you could stand on the street corner and somebody would go, "Hey, kid, come with me." I think as crazy as it sounds, it would be kind of cool if there was a possibility to say to this young 18-year-old guy walking around with no clue what the hell his life is going to be and say, "Hey, look, you're not going to make any money, but you're going to come on the road and we're going to teach you something that's going to be
That's the way it
the rest
used
of
to
your
be.
life."
Yeah.
And
They just need
I would
hands.
like to see that continue, because again, like you were saying with some of these other groups that want to pay you what you get, and
but that's an opportunity for the young people.
Opportunity, and I would like to see that being passed on. So
There was an episode of Jesse Dupree's Full Throttle,
okay,
on TV where they were doing the biker thing out there, right? In what is it?
Where is he? Is he in Vegas?
No, not Vegas.
No.
It's the big biker.
Yeah,
Full Throttle
Sturgis,
right? And apparently they had a major show coming in, like Korn or something that night, and they were like, nobody showed up to load in their stuff. And they literally were going out into the audience of drunk bikers going, we need people to roll and empty the semi onto the stage so we can start setting up. We just need people. We need hands.
Need bodies, yeah.
And they had all these drunk bikers pushing, cabinets. But that's the way it was 30 years ago. They just needed hands. There were stage people that knew what they were doing.
That's the
they
love
just
of
needed
it.
people.
I think that's where the love of it comes from.
Yeah.
When it's in your bones and in your blood is when you, even if it wasn't in your mind to do it, because a lot of these guys that come out of school, they're looking down the road at the money and the, whatever.
Right.
These guys that are just coming in, I'll do this for free just to be in it.
Yeah.
Those are the guys that they make the biggest impact. I truly believe that.
All right. So, Wayne, I appreciate you coming on in, man, and spending the time with us.
Yeah.
I know that when you're on the road now, you're going to start doing little clips for Mayhem Local Live.
Yep.
Check-ins.
Yep. Some check-ins.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That'll be great. Any last words, Mr. Perry?
Other than the fact that you are truly amazing, not only
Thanks, buddy.
because of the things that you've accomplished, but the things you continue to do. And I just want to personally say thank you for sharing some of your experiences with us, all of our audience, and we hope to get you back here again
buddy.
sometime soon.
You got it. Awesome. Thanks. But
Always. All right. Anthony, Mayhem Local Live.
Mark Perry, Mayhem Local Live.
see
you guys.
everybody.